What's up, y'all? This is John and Mike back for another episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Tonight, we are joined by Jim Dunaway from the next round to tell us how nothing has changed and we're going to be depressed on Saturday night and just probably going to cry during the episode on Sunday. But before we get into all that, Jim, how are you? Mike, how have you been?
I'm doing great. I don't know about Mike. I can't speak for him, but I'm excited for Alabama to play somebody good again to find out if Florida State's just that good or if Alabama looks more like the team at Tallahassee. So I'm excited about the trip to Athens this weekend.
Are you going to the game?
I'll be there. Yeah, can't die.
Okay.
Well, I haven't missed many Alabama games since I got into this business in 1988. So you can do the math at how old I am. I've been doing this a long time, and I've been to almost every Alabama game since then. So I'll be there, and chances are it's going to rain. Seems like it always rains on me at some point when I'm in Athens for a
Oh,
Bama game.
that's a bad omen. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
Oh yeah, my wife actually made it on the CBS broadcast of the 2015 game
yeah,
because it was raining so hard it looked like she was crying.
yeah.
Uh, I'm
Yeah, we
actually
bring up back
waiting
upscale
to
out.
see if my media credentials will get approved for this game. Um, but I will be there regardless. It's just, will I be credentialed and able to access those areas, or will I just be in my seats?
It's a good life. You got seats and credentials. I
Maybe
just,
on the credentials. This will be
yeah.
my first time getting them, so that'll be interesting.
Well, good luck, man. I hope having me on gets you into that sweet spot with the SID folks in Georgia.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, nervous about the game. I keep going, peaks and valleys. Anytime anyone asks me about it, like yesterday, I was super optimistic, and then when we were talking about, talking with you today with a colleague, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna come out of this just knowing that we're gonna get blown out. So it's
Dude,
definitely a roller coaster.
I don't understand y'all's mindset here. I mean, you guys are the dogs now. I mean,
You you you
for
guys are in our heads. You're
for
in our heads.
17 years, Alabama ran the sport, and now it's Kirby in Georgia. This this woe is me mentality. You guys need to own this thing.
That's a Jedi mind trick. I'm not here for
Well, what we call it is we call it MRAS. It's the Mark Richt anxiety syndrome. I'm convinced we're
Yeah,
losing to everyone on Saturday morning.
that.
Austin Peay,
yeah,
I thought it was over.
Yep.
yeah. Well, imagine going to Tallahassee with the belief that, man, this Alabama team is about to go flex his muscle on a little ACC team that was 2-10, and Alabama, they're gonna contend for the national championship or just contend for the SEC championship, but it'll at least be one of those. And then you show up at Tallahassee and you get pushed around. And that day, Florida State was more physical on both lines of scrimmage, and that was the most surprising thing that to date I have seen in this college football season, and that includes Dabo being with the record he's got. It includes Gundy being fired. Anything I've seen in college football, Florida State pushing Alabama around physically, still number one on my list this football season.
Yeah, that was I think Bama covering that game is my lock of the week of the century. And
Yeah.
hurt.
Yeah, and so you've kind of answered our first question already of the level of competition that Alabama's played. Like obviously, week one surprised pretty much everybody with how that went, and ULM and Wisconsin, who at one point people thought was a legit competitor. Um, so is there anything we know about the real Alabama this year?
Not yet. I mean, they're talented, as you guys know. That's just what Kirby Smart does at Georgia, and it's what Alabama did under Nick Saban. So, and Kalen DeBoer is recruited really well. So there's recruits on the roster. What is different? I was talking to somebody in our next round offices today. I was like, he's like, you got to feel on the game, and I was like, I will never feel uh, comfortable with Alabama winning another game on any Saturday ever again after living through Vanderbilt on the road last year, living in Oklahoma on the road last year, Florida State on the road this year. So there's never for 17 years. I cannot tell you guys how comfortable it was having Nick Saban as the coach and knowing that every Saturday you had the best roster. And this roster is really, really good. And Alabama could still be national champions when it's all said and done. I'm not coming on here to tell you that that's not the case or the belief. It's just different when for 17 years you knew that no matter who you were playing, you had the best team. Now, it didn't mean you won every game, but you knew nobody had a better roster than you. And that's not the case anymore. This thing's been spread around. Part of it is Kirby Smart was one of the reasons Alabama always had the best roster. He's a dog at a recruiter, and he's doing the same thing at Georgia. But even when these two got to be, when Kirby got to Georgia and Nick was still there, these rosters still were, I still felt like Alabama slightly or at least equal. And I never went into a game thinking Alabama didn't have the depth to just wear anybody else out. And now it's just so spread out in this league. And we do it. I'm sure you guys do this exercise. We do a power ranking in the SEC every week. And dude, I throw Kentucky 16. And then after that, you can't throw Vandy down there anymore. You can't throw Mississippi State down there anymore. They're playing good. You're stupid if you throw Florida at 15. I think they're better in their 1-3 record. So, but we got 15 legit SEC teams in this league. So it's any given Saturday, and this is one of those this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't do the power rankings because of that. We actually put out our own top 25 every week.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious over this season at least, the AP poll is not reliable. And yeah, so we started doing our own poll because then you can bring in, out of conference competition like the Mississippi State and Arizona State thing and the Florida State and Alabama. So we started doing that. But it's nobody ever has the same opinion about every team ever.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't know, Mike, you chime in here. It's so hard to know what to expect every week. I love Texas Tech's win over Utah last week, but there was no way I saw Indiana,
right,
beating Illinois like they did. I don't know about you, Mike.
No, God, no, not at all. I'm kind of the Big Ten homer on the pod, and I thought Illinois was going to crush Indiana, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
Every time we are about to get on and do our recap episode, I'm always like, I know even less right now than I did a few days ago. Like I'm flabbergasted at the season so far.
Yeah, me too. But this one should be fun on Saturday with Bama heading over there. The point spread surprised me. I don't know about you guys when the point spread came out. I thought Georgia would be about 6.5, and when it came out 3.5, I was like, ooh, maybe Las Vegas is like you guys think Alabama has a chance.
Yeah, I think the history of Kirby being 1-6, and I do think the national narrative of most people not watching Georgia's game against Austin Peay, everybody's like, oh, well, Georgia's not good. They beat Austin Peay by this, not realizing that Georgia ran 3 plays in the second half of that game and just ran the clock out. So no, I don't like the line. There's absolutely no way I'm putting money on either side.
Oh, I wouldn't either. If I did, I'd lose it, and my wife would put me in the doghouse. No pun
Well,
intended.
well, there's no way there's actually going to be a blowout on either side. That's probably right around where this game is going to end up one way or another. It's like the 3.5, 4.5, whatever.
Yep. I hope so. So quarterback, though, I'll tell you though, when I watched the Tennessee Georgia game just to see what Gunnar Stockton would look like in that, and even when Tennessee was lining up to kick the game-winning field goal before Georgia actually won the game, I take notes when I go back to watch every game, and I'm watching the game, and I'm like, even if they'd lost this game, I was going to be more impressed with Georgia's offense than I was going into that game. And I'm so impressed with what Gunnar Stockton does, what Mike Bobo trusts him to do. And I think that's one of the key matchups this week is can Gunnar Stockton throw the ball on what is a very good Alabama secondary. A lot of veterans back there. They're very deep. Damani Jackson, Xavier Brown, Bray Hubbard, Keon Sabb, Deshaun Jones. They're familiar names that have been out there for last year and this year for Bama. They've got the experience. And, I worry more about Alabama's swarm defense stopping Georgia's running game than I do about Georgia actually throwing the ball on Alabama. But you got to throw it at some point. It'll be interesting to see if Gunnar can hit some of those Bulldog wide receivers in this game.
Georgia certainly has a better wide receiver room this year than it did last year. I don't think there's any debate in that. So yeah, it's going to be an intriguing matchup for sure.
Yep.
All right, so getting into Alabama's quarterback situation, Ty Simpson in his first year of starting, and he seems to be the type of quarterback that Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb like to run their system in the similar to Michael Penix in that way. It, and he's averaging almost 290 yards and 3 touchdowns passing per game. So what should we expect from him this weekend?
Well, this is the number one storyline I'm going to watch because for Ty Simpson, his first start, Florida State manhandled Alabama's offensive line. And that was supposed to have two potential first rounders on it at tackle and Proctor and center in Brailsford, and some really good guards. And, the right tackle still a work in progress, but that was supposed to be a really good offensive line. And Simpson was swarmed. The game moved very fast for him. He didn't cost them the game by any stretch of the imagination, but he did not play as clean in that game as he did against Law Monroe and then against Wisconsin, where, the reason Kirby Smart is saying he's one of the hottest quarterbacks in the country, if not the hottest, is because of what he did when he got back home against lesser competition. So Georgia will provide more of a sounding board of what Florida State did. It'll challenge Alabama in the trenches. And if Ty gets time, the receivers are good. He's an accurate thrower, a very fast decision maker. But it comes down to whether Alabama's offensive line can hold up and protect him. And on paper, it's supposed to be able to do that. But it did not do that against Florida State. And last year, at times, it had holes in protecting even Jalen Milroe. That's why he had so many rushing yards. So protection, if he gets it, Ty Simpson will eat you alive. But if he doesn't get any protection, then that's where mistakes happen.
Yeah, I don't think the Georgia defensive line has a sack this season. I know they have tackles for loss. I could be mistaking that for somebody else. But so moving on to the rushing game a bit. So it's been held back some by the Jam Miller injury. So it's a two-part question. What's his availability look like so far? And second, if he's not playing, what's the ground game going to look like without him?
Jim will play this week. I think this was always the target date. I have not seen the availability report. It's coming out here momentarily, but he will play. And so a little breaking news there. If he's on the availability report is questionable, I will bank on him actually playing this week because they've been targeting this date. Unless he got banged up in practice this week, he'll play. What he brings to the table is, yes, he's a good runner, but he's a really good receiver and even a better guy in pass pro. He is number one on the depth chart because of his ability to block. And I'm looking at the availability report that just came out, and Jim Miller is not on it anywhere. So he is ready to go. They have stumbled into a star in Kevin Riley as well, who's got a lot of playing time with Jam out. He's a guy that was probably fourth on the depth chart going into game one. But throughout the week of practice when Jam got hurt, Riley was the guy that could protect. He could catch the ball out of the backfield, and when he was running with his pads down. So he's a guy you will see in there when Jam's not in there as well. So the run game, they struggle with a traditional run game. And this isn't a Kalen DeBoer problem. This goes back to from Tua Tagovailoa on, take away Mac Jones in that 2020 year when they had Najee Harris and they were able to run the ball because they had 4 NFL wide receivers and you had to respect them. And there was just so much space to run. But just lining up the old murder ball that Nick Saban built a dynasty on, just hasn't been there for almost a decade, it seems like. So they traditionally running the football, they struggle at that, and they don't have Jalen Milroe to enhance that run game. Ty
Thank
can
goodness.
run, Ty can run, but he can't run like Jalen did. So if Alabama runs, they're going to do it with a traditional run game with Jam Miller, and that just hasn't been their forte. So much so that Justice Haynes left the school and went to Michigan, and he's lighting it up with Michigan. So they've got talent back there. It's just not what they have done very well, even before Kalen DeBoer got on campus for a long, long time.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what was the thought about how Justice was doing up there in Michigan? Like, did
Yeah.
y'all know that was possible for him? I mean,
Oh
it's not.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, even when Alabama played Michigan out at the Rose Bowl when we were out there, Haynes got in and made a couple of big plays, and you just thought that was going to carry over to the next year. But there's not a lack of talent at the running back room. It's just for whatever reason, Alabama hasn't been able to just bully people around. They have their moments, but it's never, you never feel as comfortable as you used to when it was 3rd and 1 back in the early teens. You just, without even a tush push, you knew Alabama could line up and get a yard if they needed to get a yard anywhere on the field, and that's not a given anymore. They'll run the ball some, but this is a pass happy offense. And I'll tell you, Ryan Grubb, even with the Seahawks last year, they were 28th in the NFL in rushing. So he's comfortable even without running the football. They can do it non-traditionally by just getting the ball out on the flat to a receiver or to a running back out there in a sort of souped up running game just with a little swing pass. So they'll have those ground yards even if it's through a short pass.
So the pass catchers have continued to be a bright spot. Ryan Williams still obviously one of the most talented players in the country, and Jeremy Bernard has had a larger role in the offense early this season than he did in 2024, with a third of his yards already from last season. And so the question that every Georgia fan has is Ryan Williams going to do what he did last year to us?
Well, I mean, if they need a touchdown late, I wouldn't jump for where you think he's going to be. I'd expect him to stop back up. I was about to say like Michael Jackson, but that would be dating myself, right? So he has a dance move when he's out in the flat like that. He did it earlier this season against Wisconsin. The dude is good. I'll tell you what Ryan Williams is that he doesn't get enough credit for is that he is a unselfish route runner. And by that, I mean he will run routes that are designed to pill off defenders that open up Jeremy Bernard underneath. And that is why Bernard has become the yard eater for this Alabama passing game, is because you've got to respect Ryan Williams' ability to get open. And he runs his routes even when he's not going to get the ball, that peels off defenders and opens it up for Bernard. And if you're not an educated football fan or journalist, sometimes you'll look at the numbers and say Ryan Williams is not doing his job. When if you watch the games, um, he will peel off, and all of a sudden there's Bernard open with nobody within 10 yards around him to catch a pass. And that is just so valuable at what Ryan Williams does. Now, I will tell you, there Isaiah Horton can take the top off. He comes from Miami, but there is an emerging star in this receiving corps. He's number 17, Lazier Brooks, and Lazier is a guy that everybody, including myself, wants to see more of, and he's getting out there now when both Bernard and Williams is out there. 17 is getting out there a little bit more, and he is a game changer. He's got a twitch off the line. He can get it and do something afterwards, but he is emerging into the best route runner on this team, a little like Devontae Smith used to be at Alabama. You could watch Amari Cooper, Devontae Smith, and it was almost like they were running on that X or O line that's on the dry erase board when you're drawing up a play. They were that precise on their route running. That's what Brooks brings to the table, and he's only a couple of games into his career, but that dude can play.
don't like the Devontae Smith comp, but again,
No,
nightmare.
absolutely not.
No,
Yeah.
hate to hear it.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. So moving to the offensive line. So still seems to be a question for the team this year. They've allowed week one they allowed 3 sacks and 7 tackles for loss, and then against Wisconsin, the rushing attack struggled quite a bit, only gaining 72 yards in the round. So, first question: Do Alabama fans consider Caden Proctor a bust?
Um, no, because of his true freshman year, he started off really slow. And then eventually by the time they beat Georgia and went to the playoffs and lost to Michigan, he became a big factor. And then the coaching changed and he went to Iowa, then he came back to school. He was not, he was really good last year, but he is off to a slow start this year. And he is probably the biggest human being. And I've covered Shaquille O'Neal, and I'm good friends with Charles Barkley. This guy's the biggest human being that I have ever stood or sat next to at SEC Media Days. He was in a suit, and I was just like, "How much do you have to pay for your suits, dude? Because of the extra fabric." He's a legit 360, and he's fast. But just watching him in that Florida State game, I thought to myself, 360 maybe just a little too much for him, and he has looked faster in the Wisconsin game. And I expect he's just one of those guys that gets into a season late. I expect him to have his best game of the year coming up this weekend. That just seems to be the DNA about this team. They play up to their competition really, really well and struggle against teams that really don't have the great Georgia legacy on it.
The
Like
cachet,
last
right?
year, yeah, like last year at Vandy, last year at Oklahoma, a very average Oklahoma team. Michigan in a bowl game that Alabama players weren't used to going to, a non-traditional big bowl game. They struggle to get up for games that aren't considered to be marquee games. So this is the kind of game that the DNA of this team will play its A game, and I think that means Caden Proctor will play his A game. And when Proctor is good, then Dewberry and Vanderberg and Roberts are good at the guard. Brailsford, the center, is always there. He's probably, he won't win the Remington, but he is a legit NFL center. A little undersized, but the guy's so smart and so good. It's the right tackle position where they're still working on Formby and Carroll and still trying to figure out who that's going to be. That's where they've got some question marks, and they use these last two games after getting pushed around in Tallahassee. They use these last two games to move people around, and they had guards moving around on each side of the ball, left and right, and they had different right tackles in there, and they used the last two games to experiment on the offensive line. I would imagine in the bye week, and I think Proctor told us this in an interview in a roundabout way, that they dialed in their five and they've been working together all week long. And the five you see in Athens this week, if they stay healthy, will probably be the five you see the rest of the year.
So
I did. Oh, there
no,
you go ahead.
go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to ask about this. I don't know if this was from this year, but I saw it maybe a week or two ago. Was Proctor the lineman that was warming up during the Florida? I think it was the Florida State game with the phone in his hand doing like offensive lineman drills before the game. Or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't want to call out any names on who was what, but I never know what's real anymore, guys. To be honest with
yeah,
you, I didn't see that with my own eyes, so I don't know. We UAB's here, just down the street from our studio, and I saw Trent Dilfer on the sidelines with his phone, and I glanced down at my phone even while we're doing these podcasts. So yeah, I don't know. I don't the headphones on. If you've got your phone on, are you just hitting your playlist? I don't. A lot of things can be made up. If I've got my Beats on or my whatever brand name headphones I have on, and I'm doing my pregame warm ups and stuff, and I'm trying to block out the noise, the road noise. Even when I play golf, I've got my earbuds in, and I've got to hit my playlist. I got to pull my phone out for that. So maybe that's just what he was doing. I don't like to make a big deal about that stuff. By the time you tee it up, it comes down to
yeah.
him having just a bad day blocking.
hmm
And
No, it was just weird to me because like I mean he had it in his hands and he was doing that all stuff. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm like, I'm sure that
yeah,
happens all the time, and I'm like, that just seems like a very not Alabama thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm
No.
probably making too much of
That
it,
also
but
No.
seems
No.
like a thing where like Alabama fans were mad that Kalen DeBoer wore a T-shirt against Vanderbilt last year. It's like
yeah,
it doesn't matter what he's wearing or if his phone's in his hand. Like that has no effect on the game itself.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been just he was, trying to cash in on a good TikTok, and you turn that camera out and you do a whole tutorial of this is what it's like to block in the
Yeah,
SEC.
POV. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I don't know, but I really, despite my age, I try not to. I'm a pro celebration guy. I'm a pro TikTok guy. I think you're asinine if you come in trying to make 17 to 21-year-olds not act like 17 to 21-year-olds. There, you got to have discipline, obviously. There are times and places for everything, but 90 minutes before a kick on a road stadium on a football Saturday, if I've got my phone, I got my phone. And then if we're doing team drills, if the coach doesn't scream at me to put it down, then
Yeah.
I assume we're all adults in the room.
And so, last question about the offensive line. Over the last few times that Georgia and Alabama have played each other, they've kept 1 to 2 tight ends on the line blocking for almost every play. Is that something that you expect them to do this weekend?
Yes, and that goes back to the inability in some of these games to with the traditional five guys and a running back protect the quarterback. And yeah, so they will, if needed, and I expect it to be needed, you'll get Cuevas or some of the other guys back there to help. Now, don't get lulled in because Cuevas has turned into a wonderful tight end and being a weapon offensively, and that can hurt you too. But they have no problem keeping the tight end in to help with pass pro and relying on Bernard and Ryan Williams and Horton and Brooks to get open in the passing game.
All right, so moving over to the defensive side of the ball, the front's been a bit of a wild ride as well, allowing 230 rushing yards and getting 0 sacks in week 1, and then after that, only allowing a combined 185 yards since. So what's the real Alabama here?
Well, that is a question. Roman Harper is on our show all the time, the SEC Network, former Alabama and Saints great, and he has never loved the swarm defense that Kane Womack put in when he came to Alabama. It is very different than what Nick Saban's defensive coordinators always ran. They always ran Nick's system all the way back to Kirby Smart. What Kirby runs and Glenn Schumann runs at Georgia is what Alabama always used to run. The 3-3-5 swarm is not that. And the people that complain about that say there are some deficiencies in lining up and defending the edges at times. And there have been some running quarterbacks and just some run games. But I go back to last year in Pavia and Jackson Arnold. They had some big plays and some big moments to get some key yards, and that is the biggest scare factor in this game for me is can Nate Frazier, occasionally with Stockton running the ball, but with Nate Frazier and those Georgia running backs and that great Georgia offensive line, can they punish Alabama with that swarm defense, or can Alabama be good enough in that scheme to get into a phone booth and win a traditional Alabama Georgia battle? Last year, they didn't have to do that because Alabama, because of the turnovers and the quick strikes, Georgia had to abandon the run game early on because it just wasn't enough time for you guys to get back in the game. You had to throw it all over the yard. So it wasn't in the phone booth. So we don't know if that 3-3-5, the way Georgia can get you in that phone booth, the way Nick Saban used to love to do it at Alabama, and the way Kirby loves to do it at Georgia, if that 3-3-5 swarm can man up and do that in a typical Georgia Alabama game. I have a feeling we'll find out. It'll at least be tested. Unless Alabama jumps out to 4 quick touchdowns in the first quarter again, then
No,
if that
no.
happens, then you guys will have to throw it again. But Tim Keenan being back helps that defensive line. He hasn't been there all year. He is the one guy that would scare me if I am the opposing team. He has a mean streak. He is old school Alabama football. Tim Keenan will hurt you. LT Overton is healthy. He's not on the initial availability report here on this Wednesday. He's not even as probable. His name's not on there. He is a beast as well. He can get after the quarterback. He's great in the run game. What you will not see for this Alabama team is a Will Anderson type player that they've always had. They just don't have that guy. They don't have that Will Anderson beast that you got to check and see where he is every time. So there are other guys. Rousseau is pretty good. Yanze Pierre is becoming a guy you need to find out where he is on the field. Lawson's a brilliant mind out there. But for me, LT Overton, Tim Keenan, and Rousseau is the three guys that I think could, if Alabama's defense has a day, those three names you'll hear a lot in the broadcast.
So the secondary has been statistically elite. How much of that is the level of competition and their style of play? Because, going back to
Yeah.
the Florida State style of play, they didn't really care about passing the ball.
No, you're right, and truthfully, we don't know this year. Now I know they're experienced. Xavier Brown became a star in the Georgia game last year. Jackson and Sab are good. Um, and they're experienced. Bray Hubbard's a dog. He can get after it. So and they've got depth. They've got young guys there. But they got beat on a couple of plays in that Florida State game. But that's just a weird offense, and they were flat-footed, and some of it was talk. Some people would talk about the effort in that game, but I just don't think you can go hair on fire when you're playing Gus Malzahn's misdirection with a running quarterback. And I've seen Malzahn's offense for years because we cover Auburn as well. Um, it just keeps you from playing at 100%. So that secondary got caught flat-footed a lot in that Florida State game, but they weren't throwing the football. La Monroe wasn't throwing the football. And then Wisconsin is a horrible offensive team who had their backup quarterback. So they weren't throwing the football. So you're right. Untested so far this year, throw those numbers out. I have faith, though, that secondary can hold up against the Georgia receivers. I'm more worried about Alabama stopping the run than I am Georgia beating Alabama through the air.
And that's kind of what our next question was. What's something that you're confident in the Tide doing well on Saturday?
Um, oof. Uh, in the old days, it would have been winning. Yeah, for 17 years, it was winning. And when I was a kid, I was a kid during Bear Bryant's time, it was winning. I used to, there were some games I would just go out and throw the Nerf football around. And if it was close into the fourth quarter, I wouldn't even watch the games, the Mississippi States or the Ole Misses of the world. Mom would yell, "Hey, it's within 14 points in the fourth quarter. You may want to come in." So that's just the life I've lived as an Alabama fan through the two best coaches of all time. This team, what do they do well? I do think they can get after and pressure the quarterback well. I feel like they will be able to do that. Doesn't mean they'll get sacks, but I do think they'll create some pressure on Gunnar Stockton. I do believe that Alabama will be able to throw the football on Georgia to some degree. Is it enough to win the game? We'll see. But I do think they will be able to throw the ball and have a nice passing day. And I do believe they'll be able to pressure Gunnar Stockton some. After that, I have, if Alabama can run the football on Georgia, that will be a pleasant surprise. If Alabama can stand up to the run, that will be a pleasant surprise. And if Alabama does either one of those things in the running game, if they're able to run it or if they're able to stop the run, I think Alabama's got a great chance of winning the game.
And what are you most concerned about for the game this weekend?
I am most concerned about just Georgia being able to line up because that's the easiest thing in football, right? If you just watch Monday Night Football and what the Lions were able to do to the mighty Ravens, they ran the ball 224 yards on them, and they did that. I mean, it's a snap, turn around, hand it off, and let your big ugly guys up front block. And if Georgia's able to do that to Alabama, then it'll be a long day. The score may not indicate it like if you're able to throw on somebody and over the top of them, but The ability to run the football scares me, and Alabama stopping Georgia from running the ball is my biggest fear in this game. And if you're an Alabama fan, I think that should be your biggest fear. If Georgia walks away from this 180 plus yards rushing in the game, then I think they win the game.
All right, so kind of bigger picture stuff. The last question or two here, before we get into game picks. Want to say something about Kalen DeBoer. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are, I don't know, I don't know, not super happy with him all the time. I think he's a great coach and all that, but what's a change that that he's made that the media and or fans like with this new regime compared to what Nick Saban was the last, the 17 years?
Oh, fans! I'm not sure the fans like any of it. And I think that's, just fans being fans, right?
Yeah.
They, I mean, really, if fans had their way, Dabo Swinney would be gone at Clemson right now. DeBoer would not have coached week 2, probably. That's how upset fans were afterwards, after that. And, heck, if you go back to Nick Saban's first year, Nick Saban probably wouldn't have been around after the La Monroe game that first year.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what Kalen DeBoer does really, really well. Great, great offensive mind. He and Ryan Grubb, they have a great offensive scheme, and eventually they will be able to score a lot of points consistently in this league. This isn't um, this isn't the transition you got from, say, Georgia Tech a few years ago when they were going from that old triple option, and Jeff Collins had to come in and bring them to modern day passing football. It's not that type of transition, but it is a different scheme. It's not really a pro style offense or defense. It's more collegiate, but very, very good, very, very entertaining. And I think eventually Alabama fans will fall in love with this offense, the scheme of it all, because it gets people in space and there are open receivers. He is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, and he will do interviews with anybody. He's that kind of guy. Um, and I think in this job, it's taking him a little bit maybe to adjust to everybody wanting to talk to you. When we have the Monday news conferences, I would imagine in Seattle with the Seahawks there and most of the season, the Mariners still playing, and the Sounders or anything else going on in Seattle, that the Washington Coach Weekly News Conference did not have 15 cameras there. There are 15 cameras and 25 reporters in a room every Monday in Tuscaloosa. And that's just the way it is. And usually they're going to carry you on the SEC network live. And I think he, stopping to get gas, going to the grocery store, people asking you, is your daughter going to transfer from Washington to play softball at Alabama? How does your wife like it? The wife hearing, people upset about the Vandy loss when she's going shopping in Tuscany. I mean, all that's a big adjustment for somebody who comes in here. Nick Saban was able to control all that. Nobody was walking up to Nick Saban if he happened to be in a Publix. Chances are good Nick Saban wasn't in a Publix. He was always working, right? He was always in the football building. Kalen DeBoer gets out and about. I would tell you that he does so many things well. And in this day and age, I always ask you, who are you going to get? If you're going to get rid of Kalen DeBoer, who are you going to get? And I think Kalen DeBoer showed at Washington he can get a team to the national championship game. And if he's given time here in Tuscaloosa, I think he'll have Alabama consistently back into the playoffs. He does so many things well. I just think it's an adjustment anytime there's a new coach, especially when you're going from one that was as regimental and, so successful, but it was by the book from the head coach to the person who's mopped the floors. There was a way to do things, and you did it that way for 17 years, and then boom, all of a sudden it was different. And it just takes a while to adjust. And it takes a while for the players to adjust to that too. Sometimes you can give them too much freedom too quick. And I think last year that showed that they were not on the same consistent level that usually Nick Saban had them. And they didn't handle the maturity of being able to make a lot of their own decisions that they were not able to do under Nick Saban, like have your phone during warmups.
All right, I have one last question before the game picks. So, me and a colleague talk, a lot about SEC football and all that, and he's been around forever. I mean, he's gone to like 50 something cocktail parties and all that.
Right.
So like, and he talks about this a lot, and I've noticed it a lot more. And you may or may not have the answer to this. I'm just curious, but why are there so many referees or officials that either played at the University of Alabama or just went to the school in Tuscaloosa?
Wow. Can you name one more other than David Smith, who's the white hat on the best crew? Is there another guy that I don't know
I
of?
I thought there. Well, I started a list. I'm like,
Yeah.
but I'm
Now,
I'm trying to
there
find it.
there are some that I know. There's at least one other head referee
It
that
was
is.
Steve Marlowe. He worked the Georgia Tennessee game.
Yeah. Is he an Alabama,
He said
University of Alabama, or is he just a state of Alabama resident?
it said that they said on the broadcast that he was a Bama grad.
Okay. I don't know Steve like I know David Smith. Smith, of course, played quarterback.
Mhm.
I would tell you if you line up all those guys, I've had the ability to officiate an A-Day game before.
Oh, neat.
And it was a great experience. Um, Steve Shaw, who's the head of officials, is a Birmingham guy.
Mhm.
And he used to be a referee, head referee. Listen, it is a tough job, and it gets only tougher when we got, better cameras
Mhm.
and slow mos. If you look around the every referee, if you line them up, and I'd love to see this, yeah, I think you would probably find some Georgia guys. You would probably find some Tennessee guys. I don't know the criteria other than Steve Shaw used to go scout high schools. He would scout MAC games, Sun Belt games, Big 12. I mean, and he would recruit the best of the best, almost like you're recruiting, 4 and 5 star players to play in the SEC. The SEC, and I know we're coming off, and I'll say it out loud, like I said over the weekend. The Auburn Oklahoma game was the worst officiated SEC game I've ever seen, and I've done this for 30 years.
Mhm.
It was very old school Pac-12 who used to have the worst officiating group. But people keep saying, all of these SEC officials, and I'll die on this hill. SEC officiating is better than ACC officiating, Big Ten officiating, and Big 12 officiating. So is the SEC officiating perfect? It is not.
Right.
There are missed calls in every game every week, but it is better than um, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12. You know that by the fact that when the SEC is not in the national championship game or in the Rose Bowl, it's the SEC that's officiating that game. And it's usually David Smith, former Alabama quarterback's crew now, who's one of the best crews that are out there. If you've got David Smith on your game, it's a big game, and Alabama's not playing in it because he can't do Alabama games.
Okay, that
Uh,
was okay. Yeah, I was curious about that because I thought that was a
yeah,
rule, but then okay,
yeah,
all right,
you
okay.
can't do Alabama games if you're an
Right.
Alabama grad. You can't do Georgia games if you're a Georgia grad.
Mhm.
So that is a rule, and that's not even just head referee. You can't be a linesman, you can't be a back judge, you can't be any of that. So
Mhm.
that is a steadfast rule. I think the easiest thing to do as fans and in the media is to blame officiating. I really do. There are like I have no problem with most officiating. The Auburn Oklahoma, the only problem I had on the first overturned touchdown, and I'm not an Auburn guy, so I'm not coming as an Auburn guy. Um, I'm actually an Alabama guy and an SEC guy. But I watched that, and Sean McDonough does a great job on the broadcast of saying, if it's taken us this long to review it, do we have conclusive evidence to overturn it? And the answer is no. If you
Right.
can't get under there and in 120 seconds, 2 full minutes, look at it and say, Oh, okay, he was down, or oh, okay, that's incomplete. Well, then that's not conclusive to me. And then why are we overturning these humans who have made a bang bang call where we're slowing it down frame by frame? So that shouldn't have been overturned. The hideout play, the SEC had to admit that they blew it. That's
Yeah.
just a rules thing. They blew it by the rules of that play. And by the way, that's been a rule for a long, that's not even a
Yeah.
new rule. They just blew that. And that's one I think the SEC and all of football should be able to buzz down like 12 on the field or 13 on the field. They should be able to replay that. They should be able to go, man, there's no Auburn defender within 15 yards of that guy. Something's weird. Let's look at this on replay before we confirm it. And then the pass interference on the wide receiver pass that wasn't called, that's just an official in a bad spot. And so those were three glaring mistakes. But on a misholding call in the Notre Dame Texas A&M game that gets brought up, man, that's happening quick. There's a lot going on. And are you going to blow a whistle in the final 8 seconds? That's a long debate. And you can highlight bad calls all the time. And I'll say the SEC has the best officials other than the NFL on the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can pay me enough to be a referee or an official.
Yeah.
The worst job in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have nerves of steel to do that for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so before we get you out of here, we got some game picks, and we're going to give the spread and the over/under, but we're just asking for a straight up pick.
Okay. So straight up, you don't need me to help you win money on Saturday. Okay, got it.
Got it. Yeah, and this week was really tough to just pick out 4 games because of how good of a slate it is. But we do have first one, Ole Miss at LSU. Ole Miss 1.5 point road favorites, over under 55.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to take LSU to win this one. LSU, I know the Clemson, the Florida wins. The resume doesn't look as good because of what Clemson and Florida have done since those wins. But I believe Garrett Nussmeier, they're averaging about 345 yards a game, which doesn't blow you away total yards, but they've only got 5 touchdowns. And I think they correct that problem. But I'm taking LSU because of Blake Baker. And I'm not saying that the combination of Austin Simmons and Trinidad Chambliss are going to throw 5 interceptions like DJ Lagway, but I believe Blake Baker and that defensive coordinator, defensive staff there at LSU is elite at fooling quarterbacks, especially inexperienced quarterbacks. And Simmons and Chambliss do not have a lot of seat time. And I don't think Ole Miss will be able to run the ball enough to win that game. So I think turnovers help LSU's offense get enough points. Give me LSU 30-17 over Ole Miss.
Okay.
We got Auburn at A&M. A&M 6.5 point home favorite, over under 53.
I left Auburn, Oklahoma, thinking Auburn impressed me more. They were better than I thought they were going to be, even in a loss. And I'm not saying if those calls had gone their way, the three I highlighted, they would have won the game. But Texas A&M against Notre Dame, Concepcion and Craver were elite burners. The speed of A&M blew me away. But something's wrong with Mike Elko's defense right now. And I think Auburn gets just enough to cover and get away from College Station with maybe the most impactful playoff upset of the weekend.
Ooh.
Give me Auburn to win a close one at Texas A&M. I'm going to put this one 31-27 Auburn.
Wow. Okay.
We got the Big Ten matchup, and it feels disgusting to say that about Oregon. We're going to Penn State. Penn State 3.5 point home favorite, over under 52.
Listen, a lot of pressure on James Franklin to win this type of game. It's a big game. A big fan of Dan Lanning and what he has done. Can Oregon's defense stop Aller and Singleton and Allen and those guys from running the football and force Aller to beat them passing? That'll be the key to the game for me. And I'm not blown away yet with Oregon's receivers. Dante Moore has checked the boxes so far for me at the quarterback position. I think I'm going to surprise a lot of people. I'm going to take Penn State in a low-scoring game, 23-20 over Oregon. Give me the home team in the whiteout, 23-20 Penn State.
In a shocking, Fox isn't trying to ruin college football by allowing this game to be at night.
Yeah. Well, they get the first three picks,
Yeah.
right? And then CBS is able to protect one, and then NBC is able to protect one. So when they did all of their picks, the NBC was next, and this is the one they grabbed quickly to put in prime time. It'll be good numbers.
For
Thanks,
sure.
NBC.
Yeah. It'll get blown out though, Alabama and Georgia,
Yeah.
just because of
Yeah.
the name brands and the Alabama hate. Alabama, Georgia will win the ratings, in my opinion.
There's a lot of
Sure.
Georgia hate now too. It
Yeah.
took winning a couple of titles, but there's a lot
Yeah.
of Georgia hate out there.
Yeah. And people love to hate, so they're going to
They
watch this
do.
game. Yeah.
Hater
Yeah.
Bowl. Yeah.
All right, so Georgia 3-point home favorite over under 52.5.
This is where I should tell you that I'm calling the game, so I can't make a pick, but I'm obviously not calling the game. Um, I don't really believe Alabama can pull this off on the road. So I'm going to take Georgia
Hmm.
27-23 over Alabama. Give me Georgia
Hmm.
in a hard fought, good game, but I'll take Georgia in the win.
Well, we
And if you guys
appreciate
know
you.
if you guys know anything about my history, I am known on our show as Jimmy Landmine. That I make these predictions and they go horribly, horribly wrong.
I
So I'm
knew it.
mandated to take Georgia.
Oh.
Uh, so 27-23 Georgia. And I'll bet money on that too to try to make it come true. So there you go. I'll bet Georgia.
I wasn't asking you to take it back, but no. Well, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
Jim, we
no, 20.
appreciate you coming on and talking to us. Just like I predicted at the top, I'm more worried now than I was before. Just ah.
We'll see how. I just picked Georgia to win.
And then you
No, it
told
makes
us
it
that
worse.
you're always
And look,
wrong.
yeah, you don't get these unless you play a little TV, right? Right. So I'm playing TV here. Give me Georgia in the win.
There you go.
All right, we've got a couple of things to close up on, but we appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
No problem.
Yes, have a good night.
See you
Thank you.
guys at the SEC championship game.
Hopefully, man. Let's go.
Yep.
All right, guys, we appreciate Jim coming on and talking to us. Um, why is it always? It doesn't matter who we talk to about Alabama. I am more worried. I'm more worried after
Yeah.
every conversation.
No, I was hoping it would be different this time. I really did, but crap.
And I spent all day writing an article that's going to come out on Friday. Shameless plug. Uh, about how it's different this time.
I hope you're right.
And I I thought I was. Not anymore. I don't know. And we
Um,
choose to do this to ourselves every week.
yeah, we really do. No one to blame but ourselves. We asked this guy. We asked Jim to come on.
Yeah. We don't just all right. All right, so that's gonna do it for this episode of the Nothing Finer podcast. Hopefully y'all are a little bit more convinced that Georgia's gonna win this game than we are. But we are doing our preview and picks episode, Caleb and I, tomorrow, coming out on Friday. So check that out. Follow us on social media at nothing.finer.pod on Instagram, at finerpod on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Just look us up. You will find us there. And most importantly, always remember there's nothing finer in the land.
Then a drunk, obnoxious Georgia fan, I guess. I don't even know.